If you would like to submit a story, topic, or have any other inquiries, please email submit@skibanewsnation.com. Also, you can email Jeremiah Skiba personally at jeremiah@skibanewsnation.com. Also, email Jake personally at jake@skibanewsnation.com. If you want to write us a letter, send us something, help support us, or just say hi, please send your letter to Jeremiah Skiba, P.O. Box 560-271, The Colony, Texas 75056. If you write us a letter, I'll do my best to write you back. Hey, Skiba News Nation family, thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, and click that notification bell so you never miss an episode of Skiba News Nation. If you want to help support us, please consider becoming a Patreon, where you will get exclusive content, shoutouts, and much more. And you can also support our channel by getting yourself some new Skiba News Nation merch. Thank you for coming on this journey with us as we continue to stay on the quest for truth. Huge shout out to all our Patreon supporters. Thank you so much for your support. We couldn't do this show without you. If you want to help support us, go to patreon.com/Skiba News Nation. Also, you can listen to Skiba News Nation podcast on your favorite podcast platform.
What it costs. I want to know what the truth is. And I hope that people, my son, anybody, if my name comes up, whether you like me, whether you agree with me or not, at least you can respect the fact that he's on a quest for truth. He's on a quest for truth.
Welcome to Skiba News Nation, bringing you unfiltered views, news, interviews, discussions, and more. And now, here's your host, Jeremiah Skiba, award-winning musician and son of Rob Skiba.
All right, so this week we got a couple interesting stories for you guys. Just to kick us off, how long have I been a conspiracy theorist? Me. Since the day I found out Santa wasn't real. And as more and more things get revealed in our lives to be deceptions or somebody was pulling the wool over our eyes to get one over on us, I think we all become very skeptical of the news as presented by the mainstream media. And this is currently the position that gets you called a conspiracy theorist, right? Mm-hmm. That you want to make men masculine again, that you want to make women feminine again, that you want to make children innocent again. And you're getting the finger wagged at you by all these corporate media types because you're hurting their bottom dollar, especially when you look at different campaigns that are going on right now in media of pushing these agendas that are contrary to what I just showed there. But just a reminder, the aluminum foil hat, right, is safer on your head than in your brain. And of course, you're a conspiracy theorist if you align up with this little symbol in the bottom left-hand corner here, which unfortunately has to be a redacted statement, unfortunately. And also the fact that do not confuse follow the science with follow the scientist. Science is objective and factual, and scientists can be sold to the highest bidder, and that's absolutely what we've seen over the past few years. And unfortunately, many people's health has been negatively impacted. And not only that, but if you stood up for real science and questioned rushed pandemic type experimentation, then you could have lost your job. You could have been stigmatized. Even your family could have turned against you because there's so much indoctrination going out that unfortunately people became nasty with one another. Yep. And now there's a lot of vindication looking back, but unfortunately sometimes people, whenever they realize that they were wrong, they get even more bitter, even more they double down on the topic, and that's what we're kind of seeing in the world today. But don't forget this important concept. there are two truths about change. One is people can change, and two, you can't change them. They have to decide for themselves that they're going to see the truth behind the golden curtain, right? They're going to be the ones to investigate themselves, to come to a realization of reality themselves, because all we can do is leave the breadcrumbs, right? And that's what we're trying to do with Skiba News Nation.
And you know, this is how fact checking works, right? The game is called Media Fact Checkers. Well, how does it work? I cheat, then tell everyone you're a liar. So I thought that was a great breakdown of like kind of a simple way of describing how fact checking is, right? So, you know, the game is like a game of chess, and the fact checkers are cheating. And then somebody's like, oh, how is this go? How are you, you know, what are you doing here? And then they say, well, I cheat, break the rules, and then tell everyone you're the liar. And that's what they're saying to a lot of people online. Just wanted to share these quick few memes here regarding this topic. The government in 2021. Now, I'm going to have to do my Schmeagle voice. No, dude, that was not Schmeagle. All right. Hey, Jeremiah, can you do Schmeagle?
I can't. I don't know if I've ever seen it.
My precious, takes the shots or we fire you.
Stop. I feel like I sound like Yoda or something. Hold on, I'm trying to get my accent right.
Lisa.
No. What is that I'm doing? No, that's Jar Jar Binks.
Jar Jar
I'm doing
Binks.
Jar Jar Binks.
That's racist.
Okay. All right. Let's.
Takes the shots or we fire you.
Dude, I can't remember the Smeagol voice. I feel so bad.
Doesn't he say like,
Take the shot.
my precious, like that?
My precious. Takes the shot or we will fire you. Starve you, take your children, put you in camps and leave you to die without medical treatment.
Government then and in 2023.
Nobody's forced you to take
I'm back to Jar Jar Binks. Nobody forced you to take the shot. Oh, how terrible. My accent maker broke today, I guess. I apologize, everyone. But you get the point. You know, you get to read the...
No apologies needed. That was entertainment right there at its finest, I must say.
So, I mean, it's really interesting that so many witnesses are coming forward, all corroborating kind of this government dissemination of UAP information. And Jeremiah, I wanted to ask you, what would you do if a UFO crash landed in like your backyard? Like, what would your, you know, operation, like, would you just leave? Would you go investigate? Would you call the police? Would you hide it so you could, like, you know, bring it forward to the Mexican government at a later period? What would you do?
I wouldn't call the authorities quite yet. I'd probably go outside and I'd kind of see if anything's moving, and if I saw anything weird, I'd throw a baseball into the shed or wherever it crashed, see if it throws it. That's the ET plot. I'm just kidding. But I would completely, like, not tell anybody and see if there's any life aboard, or, you know, what's going on in there. And then once I've seen what it is, I would probably, you know, tell my girlfriend, tell my family, tell everybody, and then I would call the authorities. And I would take documented proof, so that way they can't call me a liar.
We kind of had a UFO that I think we showed on a previous episode, that we both went outside and went down the block because it just landed just down the street from my house, and we investigated it.
Still don't know where it went. We should have put one of those air tags on it.
Nice. Yeah, I remember you guys talking about that. It was like a crashed satellite balloon or something, right?
Here's a picture of the TV telling its person to obey it, right? Sit. I told you, no reading or thinking for yourself. And, you know, with how media is used to kind of keep us in line, understanding that this is a powerful tool that is being used in your household against you and the way you think is very, very important. People who are fully immersed in Babylon do not know it and cannot see it. When a conduct is normalized by a dominant cultural environment, it becomes invisible, and you are immersed in deception, unaware of its existence. And we have warning in Revelation, come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins, and that you not partake of her plagues. And why is this important? Most people never take a stand when things get tough because they've spent their whole lives being told to just sit down and shut up. So we're going to be talking about some, pretty pressing topics, some bombshell truths being shared, and some a time that George Bush accidentally slipped up. But some of the things that we can point to that we're being told to sit down and shut up about are trusting the science. I do trust the science, but coercion is not science. Censorship is not science. Faked data is not science. Manipulating results is not science. Cherry-picking studies is not science. Fear-mongering is not science. And we had a recent Friends star passed away in his big hot tub, and some people are theorizing that it could be because he participated and pushed a very particular medical experiment over the past 2 years. And the question is, did he suffer myocarditis? And we'll have videos that show how Pfizer is actually coming out and admitting that, and that's some things that could cause the loss of this Friends superstar, right? Was heart issues. So no one loves a warrior until the enemy is at the gate, and it's the same for the watchman. Somebody trumpeting truth, or somebody warning others of deception. Nobody likes being woken up from their warm, cozy slumber and being told, hey, the school bus is here, it's time to go. But of course, that's kind of the role we have to find ourselves in if we have a love for the truth. Because, as it says in the scriptures, if the watchman sees the enemy coming and doesn't rouse his people, then the blood of the people is on the watchman's head. But if the watchman tries to wake everyone up and nobody pays heed, then their blood's on their own head, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's why, nobody loves a warrior until the enemy's at the gate. And it's the same for being a watchman. All right, so that brings us to the first interesting video. That one time when George W. Bush accidentally told us what's happening in the Middle East here in 2023.
A lot of our allies in Europe do a lot of business with Iran, so I wonder what your thoughts are about how you further tighten the financial pressure on Iran in particular, if it also means economic pain for a lot of our allies.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. One of the problems, not specifically on this issue, just in general, let's put it this way, money trumps peace sometimes. In other words, commercial interests are very powerful interests throughout the world.
Ukrainians now, we think, have lost 400,000 men killed.
And part of the issue in convincing people to put sanctions on a specific country is to convince them that it's in the world's interest that they forego their own financial interest. And John, that's why sometimes it's tough to get tough economic sanctions on countries. And I'm not making any comment about any particular country, but you touched on a very interesting point.
Get him.
You're free, and freedom is beautiful. And, It'll take time to restore chaos and order, order out of chaos, but we will. Yeah, John. For the sake of the Palestinians who suffer, for the sake of the Israelis who are under attack, we must stop the terror. I call upon all nations to do everything they can to stop these terrorist killers. Thank you. Now watch this drive. There's an old saying in Tennessee, I know it's in Texas, probably in Tennessee, that says, fool me once, shame on you.
One of my favorites.
It fooled me, we can't get fooled again.
Oh, what a dum-dum.
That clip of when he goes, watch this drive. I'm going to have that seared into my mind for a while. Oh, man. And I think the clip of him and all the words that George W. Bush is saying in that really echoes with a lot of the lingo that's being used on this attack with Hamas and Israel, and the likening of it to a 9/11 for Israel in comparison to the 9/11 that caused the United States to enter into a 20 years long war in the Middle East over terror, right? Mm-hmm. Society has become so fake that the truth actually bothers people, and we can look back at events like 9/11 and some of the deceptions that are very plainly evident with the official narrative of that, and how it justified endless wars in the Middle East and going over there for pharmaceutical pursuits and for oil and whatever. It's really interesting that if you can crack the egg with some of these deceptions that happened 20 plus years ago, you can help crack the deceptions that are happening today. And if you do study history, you're doomed to watch helplessly as everyone else repeats it. You know, that famous saying, you know, those who don't know their history are doomed to repeat their history. Yep. But unfortunately, only a few of us look into the past and see where there have been these false flag events that have been used for agendas throughout history, and 9/11 is no different. Me trying to figure out how to explain a psyop like COVID-19 to someone who still believes the official version of 9/11. Oh, you know, and you know, of course, the thing that really clicked to me about the narrative being false, just look into, for a short period of time, if you are like scratching your head, what's the point? Why do we even need to care about 9/11 anymore? Look into World Trade Center Building 7. I turned myself into ashes for no important reason, right? Jeremiah was even joking about making a shirt. You want to tell them about your Epstein-like WT7 shirt idea you had?
Well, maybe we can put a picture of it, you know, while we're editing, but it's a photo of, it says never forget, and then it has 9/11, but in the background you see, and it says Bush did. So never forget Bush did 9/11, and it has Bush in the background. Is that the one that you're talking about?
Yeah, yeah. I was referring to I think we were talking about one where it's World Trade Center Building 7 didn't kill itself.
Oh,
like Epstein didn't kill itself.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm pretty sure you came up with that one too.
Yeah, I come up with some pretty good ones, I guess. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
Check out our shop.
Well, man. Yeah, you guys go check that out if you're interested. And you know, we're passed through 9/11 this previous weekend, of course, but and one more quick meme here before we get to this video of Rob Skiba's that he made years ago, talking about, you know, some interesting history to 9/11. But I thought this one was funny. Donald Trump, you know, never forget his building is now the tallest in Lower Manhattan. You know.
Yes.
It was funny because in the interviews about 9/11, Trump was like, yeah, before my building was the second tallest, but now I've got the tallest, baby. Oh yeah.
Well, he was the first presidential candidate to actually question the narrative, and a lot of people demonized him for that.
I remember that.
To Jeb Bush himself, he said, the buildings fell under your brother's reign. And that was probably one of the craziest things about the 2016 debates. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, I mean, for people to bring it out in the open is pretty amazing. But with that said, we're not going to get too deep into the conspiratorial aspect of it. If you guys want to, for sure, check out our interview with L.A. Marzulli, and we get into a whole host of different topics, but that's where I shared that theory about the pattern that the Illuminati or whoever, the Bohemian Grove, WHO, WEF, NWO, like all the three-letter name organization people
NWA.
plan these type of events. But anyways, let's check out this clip that your dad put out years ago, how 9/11 could have been the possible birth date of Christ 2,000 years ago. And it's a very interesting theory, and I know a lot of our audience may not be familiar with this, so let's check out this clip.
Are we seeing a plan, an end-time plan, being played out that our country was specifically designed to be the agency to bring it about? I began to wonder about that, so I started putting together a timeline of events. Now, I didn't go very far back. I'm sure I could have gone a lot further back than I did. I just went back to an interesting date, September 11th, 1990, when Daddy Bush announced his plan for a new world order. And it just so happened a few years to the day, we had another event that happened. In between that, we have in 1999, Zahi Hawass discovers the tomb of Osiris. And then we have September 11th, 2001, when Junior Bush just so happened to be in office. And one of the greatest tragedies our nation has had took place. And I believe, without a doubt, it was an inside job. And here it is 15 years later. If you still haven't figured that out yet, please, dig yourself out of the sand, pull your head out of wherever it may be, and do some research. Okay, seriously. It's time we realize what really happened on that day. But why 9/11? Why is it that specific day? Well, I showed you Revelation 9/11. That's a pretty good indicator. But I'm going to suggest there may be another one why that is a target date. And it relates to the birth of our Savior. I believe our Savior was born on September 11th. I believe he was born, and I know people have different views on this. Some say the Feast of Tabernacles. I've heard all the arguments. Mark Biltz makes a really good case for that. But I believe that he was born on the Feast of Trumpets, mainly because of this verse right here. This verse is a stellar alignment, Revelation chapter 12, 1 through 5. And it talks about a woman arrayed with the sun, the moon at her feet, and the stars at her head and all that. This exact alignment happened on September 11th, 3 BC. And to explain that a little bit more, I got a little clip here from Dr. Michael Heiser talking about this.
The signs and symbols that are used in Revelation 12 are well-known astronomical symbols. Here's a superimposed picture over it. Now we have Scorpio and Libra, the scales, but in the ancient times this was one known as the dragon. You have a very small window of time where all of these things can be present at the same time, and where everything is accounted for. The sun was clothing the woman, the king star, king planet in Leo, the sign for the tribe of Judah. All of these things did occur in a year that fits well for Jesus' birth, and that is 3 BC. And the real sort of interesting thing about 3 BCs is since this concatenation of signs can only occur in an 80-minute window, we know exactly the date of the birth of the Messiah in 3 BC, and that date is September 11th.
You can confirm this for yourself. There's some software called Stellarium. You can download for free. Stellarium.org, I believe, is the website. And the interesting thing about the software, though, is because the whole year, there's no year zero scenario, the way they reckon 3 BC is -2 in the software. So if you really want to get technical with it, you can set your viewing location in the software. So set your viewing location to Babylon. So that's where I believe the Magi were when they saw the sign. So set your location to Babylon. I would suggest you back the date off to about August 28th, -2. August 28th, -2. And then there's an option for you to step forward so you can watch each day's advancement happen. And you'll see a really amazing dance of the stars that takes place that leads up to that alignment, all coming together in perfect harmony for 80 minutes, which I believe was a time period that Mary was probably in labor giving birth, for 80 minutes on September 11th, 3 BC. It's extraordinary. But the moon at her feet is the giveaway. The moon at her feet is a new moon, which rules out tabernacles. Tabernacles is a full moon. So, and the other problem is a lot of people, one of the anecdotal references for tabernacles is, well, he came and tabernacled among us and all that. Well, that wouldn't work either, because when a male is born, the woman there's 7 days of uncleanliness where they have to be isolated in their time of uncleanness, and all that. And then, of course, on the 8th day, he's circumcised. Well, he couldn't have been tabernacling among us because he would have been away with Mary in her time of 7 days of uncleanness. The other problem is that that's one of 3 feasts where the males are all commanded by God to be in Jerusalem. Not a good way for the sinless lamb to enter the world in violation of the commandment, with both his stepfather, Joseph, and him not in Jerusalem during that time because they're in Bethlehem. So, just reading Revelation chapter 12 and looking at Stellarium, that was a slam dunk for me. And then seeing the phase of the moon, where, what phase the moon is, I'm like, and that works out better because he was born in trumpets, which is also known as the day that kings were coronated. So, and I believe that the earthly feasts represent things that take place in heaven. So while heavenly trumpets are going off, earthly trumpets are going off as the true King of Kings and Lord of Lords is being born on the day that kings are being coronated. And then you have the period of 7 days, then you have his 8th day circumcision, you have Day of Atonement, and then everything's good to go. Let's go to Jerusalem. And then they were able to legitimately tabernacle among everybody for the Feast of Tabernacles. So that's
This first appeared in scholarly journals in 1976. I can't remember the guy's name. It was Dr. Ernest somebody. But that information was out there a long time ago.
Yeah.
Publicly.
Yeah, I guess it's been around for a while, but it's only recently kind of resurfaced.
Of course, yeah.
At about the same time as everybody suddenly started paying attention to the feast anyway. It used to be, that's the feast of the Jews. But now, a lot of Christians are realizing, hey, that stuff's for us too, and people are getting more intentional about checking that stuff out. So if that's true, then we have a big problem with among other problems, with the December 25th deal. Because I believe he's coming back on his birthday. Well, yeah, it's, the Jeremiah 10 and all that. I mean, yeah, for sure. But the feasts, they are moedim in Hebrew. That means appointed times. That we are supposed to mikra. In Hebrew, mikra, that means rehearse. They are times that we're supposed to rehearse. Well, I've been in theater since 1986. Why do we rehearse? We rehearse to get it right. So that when the curtain opens and it's the main event, we all know our lines, we know our marks, and the play goes out the way it's supposed to. Well, if this is the divine script, and Yahuwah is the author of this divine script, then the main character is Yeshua, and he knows his lines perfectly, and he hits his mark every time, and he does so on the Moedim, on the appointed times. So we know that he came, he died on Passover, right? He was buried on unleavened bread. I personally believe he rose on Shabbat, just before the end of Shabbat. Whatever the case may be, we have the first fruits right after that. And then the Holy Spirit comes down on Pentecost, so he hit all the marks perfectly in his first coming. So it stands to reason he's going to hit the remaining marks perfectly as well. So we should be practicing if you believe we're in the last days. And if you want to celebrate his birth, nothing wrong with that. No command in Scripture to do so, but I mean, it's a good thing. He came into the world. That's awesome. Let's rejoice. Cool. Let's do it on the day he was actually born. Now, if you want to do it on the actual physical calendar date, that's tomorrow on our current calendar. I understand the issues of the calendar. I'll go crazy. But with our current Gregorian pagan calendar that we're using, I'm going to be saying happy birthday, Jesus, tomorrow on Facebook just to get everybody riled up. While preparing to celebrate during Feast of Trumpets, which, of course, on the Gregorian calendar slides, on the Gregorian calendar. But what a strategic thing for the enemy to do. Get us all to celebrate Christ the King. Oh, by the way, Christ is a generic word. Cyrus, pagan Cyrus king, was a Messiah. It just means anointed one. Anointed one. Somebody who's anointed. There are a lot of Christs, right? So when we're singing happy birthday to Christ the King, born this day on December 25th, I'm raising my hand and going, wait, who are we talking about here? We're talking about an anointed king, but we're not talking about Yeshua, the Son of God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So who are we singing to on December 25th then, with a big phallic symbol in our living room? That's what it is. And we have them set up in our churches. And we point to Jeremiah chapter 10, and then people say, that's talking about idolatry. Well, hello. It says, the people go out to the field, cut down a tree, stand it upright, and deck it with silver and gold. They cut a tree, bring it home, deck it with silver and gold, and then bow down before it to lay presents, and then bow down before it to receive presents. Sure looks like idolatry to me, setting up as a centerpiece in your living room. And this is coming from a guy who loved Christmas. One of my favorite things to do is to lay under the Christmas tree and watch the lights dancing on the ceiling, smelling the pine. I love that stuff. Wow. But can you imagine singing It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year now, on September 11th? In this country? Strategic, wasn't it? Yeah, pretty crazy.
Strategic, how they just so happened to have this event happen on 9/11. Well, it was so life-changing to so many people hearing some of Rob's research regarding the feast days and the Ephraim Awakening, and we're entering into the time of tabernacles coming up this month. In just a few weeks, Sierra and I are going to be heading out to celebrate part of tabernacles in Missouri, and we're going to be coming back here to Kentucky to celebrate part of it with my family. But it's the time of the year that really it's all about coming out of Babylon, and I think that's really what's the most interesting to me about this cyclical pattern of events, where we have people kind of blinded to the history, and it reminds me of this statement: everything faded into the mist. The past was erased. The erasure was forgotten. The lie became truth. And when it comes to 9/11 and the deceptions that surround that inside job, we see the same pattern happening, for example, with COVID-19 and all the narrative surrounding the mandates, how the rollout of being masked first, and then business closure and school closure, and then eventually V mandates was pushed on mankind, so that it was a open contract that if somebody voluntarily participated, they suffered the consequences, whether it was participating in a medical experiment that was perpetrated on millions of people that caused adverse effects on their health, or it was just having small mom and pop businesses go out of operation because they were squished out of existence by heavy mandates, and churches that closed their doors because they gave in to certain personage limits. And whenever history looks back at this time, the internet and the AI scrubbed narrative that we're all being prepped for is going to tell a very different story than that of which the people who lived through it remember. And it's the same situation with what happened in 9/11. There was a narrative, there was all these things that justified the war in the Middle East and the war against terror. But whenever you really look into it, our own government allegedly perpetrated this false flag event. Just look at World Trade Center Building 7. Look at the crazy things like where it was said that people found passports at the bottom of the World Trade Centers dictating who actually perpetrated the great evil, and yet the jet fuel melted steel beams enough to destroy these buildings in free fall fashion, and all of this has there are many documentaries out there. Loose Change is one that
there are too many coincidences for it to not be something more,
Yep. So with that said, the reason I want to start with this next topic is because it's tied to what the World Trade Center actually was, which was a financial hub for trading and money around the world. And now let's check out this next clip, which is the World Economic Forum and a future without elections, and how these people that are influencing the future of money have a plan for the future of the world. Check this out.
The technology now is, and digital technologies mainly have an analytical power. Now we go into a predictive power, and we have seen the first examples, and your company very much involved into it. But then the next step could be to go into a prescriptive mode, which means you do not even have to have elections anymore, because you can already predict, and afterwards you can say, why do we need elections? Because we know what the result will be. Can you imagine such a world?
Yeah, can you imagine such a world? Well, Jeremiah, that's all the news for this week. Hope you guys enjoyed, and you know, it's great to report the news from out here in the wilderness. I'm just having such a good time.
Mein Hut, der hat 3 Ecken. 3 Ecken hat mein Hut. Und hat nicht 3 Ecken, dann ist es nicht mein Hut.
This is an OPA'S Corner breaking news report. Disney has removed an Oscar-winning song from its parade amid the park's ongoing initiative to transform the popular Splash Mountain attraction to remove controversial elements from the 1946 movie Song of the South. Disney has also removed the memorable Zip-a-dee-doo-dah from the daily parade. OPA'S Corner has learned from unreliable sources the parade returned without Zip-a-dee-doo-dah, and instead featured a song from the 1953 animated classic Peter Pan, What Makes the Red Man Red? Pentagon officials announced that they have detected another Chinese surveillance balloon flying over Los Angeles. The Pentagon's press secretary said that the balloon is now over central U.S. moving eastward. Observers on the ground have been able to snap photographs of the object, and the incident has prompted the Secretary of State to cancel a planned trip to Disneyland. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs quickly claimed the object is merely a civilian observatory balloon blown off course. The Pentagon's press secretary stated, "We know that it's a surveillance balloon. We know it is a Chinese balloon, probably from Shanghai, and that it has the ability to maneuver. We have photos to prove it." Sources familiar with these photos have provided OPA'S Corner with exclusive access. A senior State Department official has provided OPA'S Corner with high-resolution imagery from U-2 flybys that reveal that the balloon is capable of photographic intelligence collection operations. More balloons have been spotted near Orlando and other U.S. locations. Hundreds of balloons have been spotted in Japan, France, and around the world. A U.S. military operation to shoot down the spy balloon was successfully completed. And OPA'S Corner has obtained exclusive video of this operation. This has been an OPA'S Corner breaking news report. We now return you to your regular programming. Arriving in 40 years? That can't be right. Oh, sure. This is just like you, Glenn, getting raptured right in the middle of a big traffic jam. Although history has long forgotten them, Lambini and Sons are generally credited with the Sistine Chapel floor. Well, you know what they say. When God closes one door, he opens another. But I didn't close the... For crying out loud, it's pull, not push. Jerry's Pizza. We deliver anywhere. First of all, this is going straight back, and I'll just have a little chat with whoever placed this order. Oh man, the coffee's cold. They thought of everything. We split ways here. Led Zeppelin, AC/DC. Stairway to heaven, highway to hell. Jimmy Buffett, musician, songwriter, typical male. You must not have searched too hard. It's been right here in front of your face the whole time. Circa 1985, Jean Bon Jovi's career hits a turning point. Unemployment office. Tommy used to work on the docks. Union's been on strike. He's down on his luck. It's tough. So tough. Early infomercials. When cook with twig skillet, do this happen you? Well, try new non-stick pan. Zorg dupes the entire tribe in an incident later known as Firegate. Dad, fidget spinners are so over. Though technically still a prince, his charming mystique soon waned. Hey babe, pull my finger. In 12th century Pisa, Italy, the construction firm of Morelli & Sons, whose members were all afflicted with a genetic disorder in which the left leg was considerably shorter than the right, began work on a new tower. What can I get you, hon? Space is curved and time is relative? Yeah, okay. Hey, I'm calling you a cab right now, buddy. How are you even alive? So, when old MacDonald turned his back, I took that axe, and with a whack whack here and a whack whack there, I finished him off. I'm launching a new anti-social network. Get out of my Facebook. Oh no, he's in trouble! Oh no, I don't know how to operate the can opener. Notice all the computations, theoretical scribblings, and lab equipment, Norm? Yes, curiosity killed these cats. Canine motivational speakers. Who's a good boy, huh? Who's a good boy? I'm a good boy. Yes, I am. You're fired, Jack. The lab results just came back and you tested positive for coke. The Spinach Inquisition. What's your nutritional value? How do you know Popeye? What's the capital of Montana? Okay, stranger. What's the circumference of the Earth? Who wrote the Odyssey and the Iliad? What's the average rainfall of the Amazon basin? Bart, you fool. You can't shoot and ask questions later. Oh, so bears really do in the woods. Eek Corporation. Wooden table 206-8. Some assembly required. Darrell suspected someone had once again slipped him a trick spoon with the concave side reversed. More exhibits. Lunar meteorite. New Guinea Hercules moth. Donald Trump tear. Please help. Can only afford basic cable, American cars, and public schools. Your electric car needs a battery. That'll be $15,000. Why we see news anchors only from the waist up. So far so good. We now have control of a prime source of their information, and the foolish earthlings do not suspect a thing Now return to your stations. And that's all.
Mein Hut, der hat 3 Ecken. 3 Ecken hat mein Hut. Und hat nicht 3 Ecken, dann ist es nicht mein Hut.
OPA'S Corner is now available on my own YouTube channel. Like, share, and subscribe.
Now, today for history, we're going to be talking about this man right here. His name is Peter Nygard. Now, Jake, do you know who Peter Nygard is?
I have no idea.
What if I told you that he was worse than Jeffrey Epstein and he was known as the billionaire vampire?
Wow.
And what if I told you that Oprah met him on several occasions? That's what we're going to be talking about today. So before we get into that, I want to give you a history of what this man, Peter Nygard, wanted you to think about him. Like what he wanted you to believe that he was really like. So let's play that first clip.
Peter Nygard was born in Helsinki, Finland, and raised in Winnipeg, Canada. His humble roots would lead him on an indescribable adventure from rags to riches. The Nygard family's first home in Canada was nothing more than a 15-foot by 13-foot room.
We lived in a converted coal bin. We didn't have running water, we didn't have heat. We lit up a stove that was middle of the room. It heated the place, we cooked on it, we had a rusty barrel, we melted snow, we were 40 below zero, going to outdoor toilet somewhere, we slept in one bed, we all sagged in the middle of it, laundry and everything over the kitchen table. We collected bottles to make it food.
Since those days, Peter's lifestyle has changed dramatically. Nygard now makes his home in his 150,000 square foot Nygard Key, Bahamas resort. Peter took his life savings plus an additional $8,000 to purchase 20% of the company. Within a few years, he owned it outright.
I gambled my whole life on this deal, going for this, without 1 ounce of training, and all of a sudden I was sit there all by myself. With my whole biggest gamble of my life, and all my money I had to gather at that point, invested, and not even training, not even a moment.
In 1978, Nygard opened his 100,000 square foot Inkster plant in Winnipeg, and the company has not stopped growing since. Nygard International now has offices in New York, California, Toronto, China, and Montreal, delivering to over 200 of its own retail stores worldwide. Peter's adventures have put him in company with some of the world's most famous and influential people, from Oprah Winfrey to Sean Connery to President Bush. He chaired the advisory committee that led to the development of the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, and has led the way in technological advancements in the fashion industry.
I propose a toast to one of the great designers, and probably the greatest designer in North America, Peter Nygard. Peter?
Nygard's We Stand United campaign has earned him recognition in both Canada and the U.S. But Peter Nygard has not forgotten where he came from. He annually donates $1.8 million to the cause that hits home with women around the world, breast cancer. Peter's journey has seen him rise to the #1 position in women's fashion in Canada and a renowned position in the industry. This year, the company celebrates a new milestone in its history with the opening of the new world headquarters in the middle of Times Square in New York.
Now, my guess is that he probably produced that himself because it's the furthest thing to what he really was. And I remember as a kid, I would get all my information from Opa because I'm autistic. So I would ask him questions, just random questions, and I don't even know how it came up, but I remember him telling me about Peter Nygard on several occasions, about meeting this guy who was a pervert and a creep, and how he thought he was like the coolest guy ever and all this stuff. Opa, can you tell a little bit about the first time maybe you met him?
Well, it's been 40, 50 years, so quite obviously my recollection timeline is probably a little off. But we started, me and 3 other people started a little company called Camsco in 1971, and we created a computerized automated manufacturing system for the apparel company, where you could make patterns, you could put the patterns together in a nest to save fabric, and you could design patterns. And we started this business out. It was small, but we sold quite a few systems, and they were pretty expensive. Initially, they were running between $350,000 to $500,000 for the system. There were trade shows that you could take your equipment to, whether it would be sewing machines or boilers or our CAD system, and display them. And I remember quite distinctly that and these shows were held in Atlanta, Georgia, for the most part. And I remember very distinctly seeing this man walking down the aisle toward our booth. He was wearing a silk tight shirt, open down to his navel. He had, you know, big chest hair. He had these gold necklaces all around his neck. He had rings on his fingers. He had tight silk pants and white high heel shoes. And as he was walking down the aisle, he had 2 models, or 2 girls, voluptuous girls, walking with him, and he came into our booth. Now, he was interested in technology, and he wanted to create and buy technology. So we sat down with him in our little conference area in the booth, and I was there for technical support, because a lot of the computer system that we were selling, I had a little bit to do with, as far as the designing of the system and what have you, and I could answer any questions. And he came off to me as a very, very stuck-up person who was really all into himself. Later on, he came up to our hospitality suite in the Peachtree Plaza up in the penthouse up there. And at that time, it was kind of interesting because he had gotten out of all of this silk tight clothes and just had normal pants and a shirt, and sat down and talked with us about the system and about the possibility of buying it from us. And he looked very smart, very
educated,
business educated, yeah. And he was a completely different person than what he was at the Bobbin show. Unfortunately, we didn't get to sell the system to him. He bought from one of our competitors.
And why is that?
Well,
was it because of the woman that he wanted to buy?
Oh yeah, I forgot that part of the story. Yeah, when he was up in our hospitality suite, we had our vice president, our vice president of marketing. He had an executive secretary, and she was just voluptuous. And so he told us, he said, "Look, I'll buy your system. You just throw her in on the deal, and you got it. I'll sign the papers today." And quite obviously, we didn't do that. So I don't know if that's why we lost the sale or not, but I can tell you that our competition had some more equipment. They had automated cloth cutting equipment that we didn't have. And I think what they did was they sold the cloth cutting equipment and threw in the CAD system as a sort of like a candy. So that was at our company called Camsco. Now later, after the competition, the one that sold the system to him, they acquired us, and I left with some other people, and we started another company called Microdynamics. And so we made basically the same kind of system, but based on personal computers, IBM PCs to be exact. And Peter Nygard was very interested in that system, so I flew up to Winnipeg and went to their headquarters in Winnipeg with a salesperson, a Canadian salesperson, and we sat down with Peter Nygard and went over discussions of our system, and he bought one. And then later on, there were 2 or 3 more visits that I made up there for technical support, training, what have you. And every time I went up there, we always had to sit down with Peter Nygard and give him status reports and what have you. And at that particular point in time, he all seemed like a normal person. He wasn't this outlandish person that came in the silk-tight shirt and pants with the women dangling all over him. So I never thought anything about it until all these reports came out that Jeremiah is about to reveal to you here.
Now, when OPA'S said that Peter Nygard would buy the woman from his company, he was not kidding, because let me take you down a rabbit hole that'll blow your mind. This guy is so sick and so twisted. Let's just play this clip.
You gotta really decide in your head just what is it you want to do, and in a systematic way drive yourself towards it. And then you have
this is about the
to say,
age.
okay, if I'm going to do this, this is what I have to do to get there.
It is not hard to find Peter Nygard boasting about his business prowess or his humble beginnings. Born in Finland, he arrived in Canada in 1952, the son of immigrants to Manitoba. By 1967, he had bought into a small women's clothing company, eventually naming it Tan J. Over the next several decades, he would grow that into Nygard International, a global fashion empire founded in Winnipeg.
If you want to be the best in the world, you can't pursue much more than that.
But while Nygard was building his brand, there were whispers and rumors about sexual misconduct. A dropped rape charge in 1980, sexual harassment of his employees in the 1990s. But with the Me Too movement still decades away, none of it would stop Nygard, at least not yet.
We have some breaking news for you. Canadian fashion mogul Peter Nygard has been arrested.
Following a request from the U.S. Justice Department to begin extradition.
He's been indicted in the Southern District of New York on multiple charges of sex trafficking minors and racketeering.
Peter Nygard, with allegations of rape and sexual assault against the Canadian fashion icon by more than 80 women in over 4 decades from several different countries, and now with an arrest for sex trafficking and racketeering. And underlying it all, one fundamental question: how did it stay a secret for so long? Peter Nygard, as you've never seen him before.
He told me to film everything, so I had terabytes of footage.
Nygard's personal videographer is now sharing with us.
Nygard told me that the reason why Jesus is so popular is because he had a good PR team. My job was to film literally everything. Nobody else in my world of Nygard has this evidence.
He used his power, his influence, his brand to show the world that I am Peter Nygard and I control everything I touch.
So disgusting, your behaviors. It's the worst place I visit. Sheer neglect.
He knew how to buy people. He bought out politicians.
The young girls and women felt I had no choice.
Peter Nygard fought in court for years to keep this video private. Stephen Ferraglio is making it public. Peter Nygard's name has been recognized here in the Bahamas for years, but arguably never more so than right now, with all the headlines about rape allegations and lawsuits. In a class action lawsuit filed in New York, she's among the first to come forward, called Jane Doe No. 1. Just graduated from grade 9, she was shopping for pants at the Nygard store in the Bahamas.
Nygard came, took my measurements because he said he wanted to make sure all his customers have something that could fit them. And we went to the front and took pictures.
This is Peter Nygard himself.
Yes.
Did you know who Peter Nygard was then?
Yeah, I know he had a key in the Bahamas.
What she says happened next is now a familiar plot in the Bahamas.
He asked me about the modeling, and then this lady came and took my number.
Did you in fact hear from her?
3 days later, she told me she was coming to pick me up and what time to be ready for.
You're being picked up at your home and taken to Nygard Key?
Yeah,
Sounds
we
very
had dinner.
Epstein-like.
I still thought we were going to have this discussion about the modeling.
And did he in fact mention that?
No. But after he told me, let's go somewhere quiet so we discuss business.
Where did you go?
To his bedroom.
His wealth and power would take him so much farther, the Bahamas. In the 1980s, Nygard purchased the western tip of New Providence, the main Bahamian island, and named it for himself. For about 3 years, videographer Stephen Faraglio was paid to document virtually everything that went on in Peter Nygard's world.
Every time Nygard was in Bahamas, we would have a pamper party on a Sunday. It would involve food, alcohol, dancing, music.
Those parties were promoted as a way to pamper local women with relaxation and fun. At least that's how Nygard described it.
The bartenders would usually slip roofies into the females' drinks, especially the ones that they know Nygard likes.
Two others who say they saw white powder at the bottom of glasses handed out by Nygard bartenders. And a total of 4 women have told us they believe they were drugged before being raped.
People who are impoverished, people who are looking for opportunities. Initially, they were invited to a party. Here are young people, young girls, who for the most part have never been in that kind of environment. So they're vulnerable, very vulnerable. They're impressed with the opulence of the place, and then they fall victim.
In the lawsuit against Nygard, Jane Doe number 3, she says she met Nygard in 2011.
She came and asked me if I wanted to meet Mr. Nygard. And when I walked into the room, he told me that I could have a seat. He offered me a glass of wine. After a few moments of answering questions, I felt really nauseous, like I wasn't myself. He said, let's go into, it was a bedroom area. He told me to sit onto the bed. He was pulling on my hand and stuff, and I felt so uncomfortable. I was confused. My head started spinning. I felt like I wanted to throw up. He started pushing on me, and I started saying, stop, stop. Everything was just spinning and rotating. He started pulling down on my sweatpants, and he penetrated me.
Peter Nygard, both Jane Doe number 1 and Jane Doe number 3, when they were 14 and 15 years old, respectively.
Now, does that remind you of Epstein? What are your thoughts, Jake?
He's like well, yes, Epstein, but he also reminds me of an OG like Andrew Tate. And some of the allegations going against Andrew Tate and his whole female industry thing, but also, just a great warning to the ladies out there about how when you go around somebody flaunting money and prestige and power, that's how they take advantage.
Well, you remember when Opa said that he was at the forefront of technology? He would take that to an extreme, and what I'm about to show you is very graphic, mentally very graphic, and probably the most sickest thing I've ever heard. There's a really great documentary, again, I'm not plugging Discovery Plus all the time because they're not a sponsor, but it is on Discovery Plus. It's called Unseemly, and it's by Chris Hansen, the guy from To Catch a Predator, friend of mine, and just check this out. This will prove to you that this guy is way worse than Epstein, and nobody's talking about it. So let's play that clip.
Canadian fashion mogul Peter Nygard will have to wait until next Friday to find out if he will be released on bail. He's currently in a Manitoba jail facing sex trafficking and racketeering charges in the United States. Nygard's legal team presented their bail plan in court Thursday. It included a promise of $20,000 worth of military-grade cameras to monitor Nygard 24 hours a day through a security company that would be installed at the Winnipeg home where he would be staying if released on bail. The plan also includes security guards to live on site in the home and keep an eye on Nygard and report him to authorities if he tries to flee. Jay Prober and Richard Wolfson suggest this should satisfy the court to grant Nygard bail, adding keeping him in jail for months, awaiting further trial during COVID, is a serious risk to his life. Scott Farlinger, a lawyer for the Attorney General of Canada, said they still have concerns over 2 of Nygard's sureties who would be responsible for making sure bail conditions were followed. If bail is granted, Farlinger is asking for additional conditions, including an electronic ankle monitor and curfew checks. Farlinger says Nygard's actual financial situation still remains unclear. Nygard was arrested in Manitoba under the Extradition Act and faces 9 counts in the Southern District of New York. Justice Sean Greenberg says she expects to have a decision in this case by next week. In Winnipeg, Mark Neufeld, City News.
I'm sure by this point everyone knows who Jeffrey Epstein was and the horrendous things that he did. But what if I was to tell you there's a Canadian man who makes Epstein look like a Boy Scout in comparison? This man is real and his name is Peter Nygard. Never heard of him? That's okay. It seems that the media has been pretty preoccupied. So much so that this complete terror of a person has mostly went under the radar. But after I describe the unthinkably vile and disgusting crimes this man has done, you will understand why he's been dubbed the billionaire vampire, the largest producer of women's apparel in Canada. It was liquidated in 2020 after the arrest of Peter. It formerly had over 1,400 employees. It was initially founded as a sportswear manufacturer and in 1978 expanded into the US, becoming an international corporation. At one point they had a store in Times Square. This was not a small company by any means, and all of this newfound wealth and success led Peter Nygard to do some very disturbing and deplorable acts that he is still being discovered for. So now that you know who this man is and how he became wealthy, it's time to find out how he is worse than Epstein. On February 25th, 2020, the FBI raided Nygard's New York offices in connection with his arrest for sex trafficking, sexual assault, and racketeering. Later, it was found that many of the sex trafficking charges involved minors. This is very disturbing, and it seems he had connections to Jeffrey Epstein, but even more disturbing than this is that according to Chris Hansen in an interview he gave to YouTuber DJ Vlad, Peter would have sex with these women, impregnate them, and then force them to have abortions. Once these abortions were complete, the stem cells would then be collected and turned into what he called Nygard K.
He was obsessed, Peter Nygard was, with stem cell research to preserve his health and youth and to create longevity. According to many people involved in the investigation, he would impregnate underage girls, have them get abortions, harvest the stem cells of the fetuses to inject in himself under the belief that it would be more beneficial than random stem cells from another source. He would go to China and other countries to learn how to do this, have it done. The underage aspect of this is, a big part of the investigation. But that's part of it. That's how far he would allegedly go to extend his life and his lifestyle.
So he felt that injecting stem cells from aborted fetuses from women that he impregnated himself would somehow keep him alive longer.
Correct.
So I worked on this for a couple weeks, actually. Is that not the darkest thing you've ever heard? Jake, what are your thoughts about that?
Ooh, yeah, it's pretty vile. And this is the wickedness that is coming to light, right? I mean, just who knows what's going on that we don't know about. And it's just a warning, out there for the people that love the celebrity prestige, because it seems to be that these people in power, these people with big names, these people with lots of money are the ones that often get away with the most atrocities. And so is that really what you want? Is that really, the kind of life you want to live? I mean, sure, it's the glamour and the glitz, right? But as soon as you get to that point, these are the friends that you're going to be making. So I don't know, man. It's so dark, and just I'm not surprised that this evil exists in the world, and just for all the TikTok celebrities and all the Vine stars and all the girls out there showing off on Instagram, right? This is what you're beckoning to you, and oh man,
you see that car? Opa's seen that car.
Yeah, I forgot the story on it. He had 7 Excaliburs. That's what that car is Excalibur. He had one in each location where he had a factory or an office or what have you. We had one in Winnipeg. He had one in Toronto. He had one in New York, he had one in Los Angeles, he had one in China, and I'm sure I'm left one out, maybe Atlanta. But he would drive this thing around, and everybody would know that was him because of the big Excalibur that he was driving around. And when I went to Winnipeg, he had that out there. I didn't ever rode with him, but I saw him get in it and drive off.
Can you go back to that other picture of what you look like probably when you met him around that time frame? There he is. Handsome Opa right there. So that was about the time that he met that man. So Opa, what are your thoughts about Peter Nygard after meeting him in the past and then all this stuff coming out? Is it surprising, or what do you think?
Well, no, it's not surprising from the man that I saw at the trade shows that was walking around with the models and dressing up lavishly, showing off his biceps and his chest hair and gold chains and rings, and he had long flowing blonde hair down to his shoulders, and just acting like he was the hottest thing since whatever. As a businessman, whenever I saw him in Winnipeg, he seemed to be very smart. But then once he went outside that building and got into his Excalibur, he was a completely different person. And I remember hearing a story from one of our salespeople that, like I said, we didn't get the sale, but we got the impression that we got the sale. And so our salesman went by his residence in Winnipeg to take the order and have him sign it. And when he got into the residence, Nygard was upstairs on the banister along with two very hot women that were very scantily dressed. And he told the salesperson, "Oh, I'm sorry, I signed the order with your competition about an hour ago." He just left.
Well, I mean, that Winnipeg office apparently had a bedroom in it where he sexually assaulted several women. I mean, that's just mind-blowing that you had no idea that that was there. Nobody did. So I highly recommend the documentary Unseemly by Discovery Plus, and Chris Hansen is the person who put it all together, and it's really great. You guys should check it out if you want to learn more about this deep, dark person. But that's all I got for Peter Nygard. So this week for history, we're going to be talking about this man right here, Charles Manson. Now, a lot of you may think of Charles Manson as like a serial killer or a crazy cult leader, but what if I told you he wasn't any of those? Like, what if I told you that Charles Manson's story goes a lot deeper than the official story? What if I told you that Charles Manson didn't kill anybody and wasn't at the scene of the crime, at any of those crimes that he was convicted of? And what if I told you that Charles Manson was a product of MK Ultra? Well, that's what I'm going to be trying to present here in this first clip. So check this out.
The original story goes that Manson believed that there was going to be a race war.
He wanted to incite this race war because he had convinced his followers that through messages he received from the Beatles' White Album, from their lyrics, from biblical Old Testament prophecies, that he had been told that he was going to be the savior of the world. And once a race war started, he would hide his family in a bottomless pit in the desert, and when the race war ended with the blacks winning, the blacks would be framed for murders. The Manson family would emerge and repopulate the planet with their perfect offspring and dominate.
Is reminiscent of a weird religious rite. 5 persons, including actress Sharon Tate, were found dead at the home of Miss Tate and her husband, screen director Roman Polanski.
Were damaged by the CIA tell their stories publicly for the first time. They believe they were part of a CIA project called MK Ultra.
Here's a flashback that no one really expected. Imagine your mother on an acid trip. I'm talking June Cleaver on LSD.
Everything is in color, and I can feel the air. I can see it. I can see all the molecules. There's a revolution. We'll be there.
When do you expect this revolution?
Soon.
Did you expect this verdict?
The revolution.
What do you mean by a revolution?
A bloody revolution.
Are you saying?
I question him, huh?
Are you saying?
Sane?
Yes.
That's relative.
Manson and his killer cult, the JFK assassination, MK Ultra, Jack Ruby, LSD, and other CIA projects.
Maybe I should have killed 400 or 500 people, then I would have felt better. Then when I felt like I really offered society something.
Like most people in his profile, Charlie didn't have a great childhood. He had an absent father and had a mother that was in and out of prison. Manson never had a stable home and spent a lot of his time getting into trouble.
Charlie Manson was basically just sort of a two-bit criminal who had spent most of his life inside the system.
When he was released about age 32 and 67, all federal institutions too, which was interesting.
This was one of the first strange things about the Manson story. The amount of times he broke parole, got into trouble, should have landed him many more years in prison. Yet, for some reason, he kept getting out.
And they allowed Charles Manson over and over and over again to get out of jail.
A real turning point in my reporting was after I got access to Manson's parole file, this record, a pretty substantial record, I took it to someone named Louis Wachneck, who was a retired judge. I brought the documents to him, we laid them all out, and he's looking at all the documents, and he's seeing this pattern of catch, release, and he's going, he should have gone back the first time they wanted him out. He said he was more important to somebody out than in.
Around this time, where Charlie created the family, he used his charm to gather a group, mostly of young women who were seen as free-spirited hippies, and a few men who idolized his so-called forward thinking.
He was like Christ, and he had the answers.
The trial that had occurred, that had been prosecuted by Vincent Bugliosi, had a lot of malfeasance in it by the prosecution. They planted a former prosecutor on the defense team to sabotage the defense. 2 or 3 of the principal witnesses, including Terry Melcher, who played a big part in this, lied on the stand. You commit perjury in a murder trial, you could get a murder sentence too because of that. So there was about a dozen of those.
So if you committed perjury during a murder trial, you could be sentenced for murder for the same amount of time that someone would get sentenced if they murdered somebody.
You are subject to an actual capital. You could be sent to the chair. The 5 people who were convicted of murder in the first trial, had I been around and able to prove this in the early 70s, Vincent Bugliosi and the 3 people who lied on the stand in a material way, in a very important way, they all could have been tried for that perjury or given the same sentence as the people who had gotten the death sentence.
There was some sort of a CIA program where they infiltrated these hippie communities and they allowed Charles Manson over and over and over again to get out of jail.
Yeah.
They knew that he was committing all these crimes.
We have to be careful when we say they.
Who's they?
Yeah, we have to break it all down. One of the other things I found out that was very significant was that Manson had a parole officer, his first parole officer, who kind of had given him a get-out-of-jail-free card for the first year after Manson was released from prison.
Smith?
Roger Smith, yeah. And he was a criminologist in the Bay Area. Manson violated his parole the day that he was released in Los Angeles. You think it's a little lie, but it's an important lie that Vince Bugliosi presented not just at trial, but also in his book. At trial, it's much more serious. He changed the narrative. He said Manson had been given permission to travel to San Francisco from L.A.
So remember San Francisco.
Manson hadn't been given that permission. He just showed up there. They originally were going to violate him, sent him right back to prison. Someone stepped in and took care of that and let Manson stay in San Francisco, and he was assigned to Roger Smith. Through a Freedom of Information Act process, I got his federal parole file. And those were the kind of seeds of how I found out that Manson had this immunity from prosecution for the 2 years he was out of prison from '67 until the murders occurred in the summer of '69.
Who was Smith doing this for? Who was giving him the instructions to continue to let Manson out and to continue to monitor him?
Well, that's the problem. I didn't get the whole file, and the file I got had redactions. He would report to the head office, and they would give him instructions. and then he would violate those instructions, and there'd be no repercussions for him or for Manson. For instance, Manson was arrested in July of 1967, 3 or 4 months after he got out of prison, when he was under Roger Smith's supervision, for interfering with an officer who was trying to arrest one of his first young followers. He was put in jail, pled out, so he got a 3-day sentence, a new probation sentence as well, and all that was hidden. It's not in Bugliosi's book. The parole officer, Roger Smith, a week later wrote to the head office that Manson was doing fine, and he actually recommended that Manson be allowed to go to Mexico and work in Mexico. And the head parole office in the United States, since it's federal, wrote back and they said, that's insane.
So I fell down the deepest, darkest rabbit hole with Charles Manson and everything that had to do with Charlie Manson. Now what if I told you, Jake, that Charlie Manson was a Beach Boy? Would you believe me? Would you believe me?
Wow, no, yeah, no, I've never heard that.
Well, Opa, can you pull up that picture? This is on the left, Dennis Wilson, and that's Charles Manson on the right. And so there's a lot of ties that have to do with the last clip I just showed with the prosecutor, and they totally framed him, and it's my belief that Charlie Manson was a product of MK Ultra. So that's what I'm going to show you in this next clip, his relationship with the Beach Boys.
I'm sure most of you are aware of who Charles Manson is and those gruesome murders, but some of you may not know he released his debut album while in jail in March of 1970. But what's even crazier to me is that there exists a whole other album that he recorded with the Beach Boys at Brian Wilson's home studio, and this has yet to see the light of day. Information on this lost album is very scarce. For obvious reasons, most people in or connected to the Beach Boys want to distance themselves from the whole affair.
Charlie wanted to be a rock star. He wrote songs with my cousin Dennis, and when things didn't work out, then he, full of rage, he wanted to kill some people. He tied it to something he called Helter Skelter, which was going to be a race war.
Which was made up by the prosecution.
Wacky to start it. I mean, it was weird.
What we do know is that Charles Manson got involved with the Beach Boys through their drummer, Dennis Wilson. Now, there are several accounts of how they first met. One involves Dennis getting picked up by an associate of Charles while hitchhiking, and yet Charles himself stated that he first met Dennis in San Francisco. However, the most likely story is that one day in April of 1968, Dennis picked up 2 women hitchhiking, and he brought them back to his newly rented home at 14400 Sunset Boulevard. For Dennis, he was always the most reckless and adventurous member of the Beach Boys, and being newly divorced, it was often the case he would bring home young women. However, this time, something was different. The women told Dennis about Charles Manson, describing him as a musician, poet, and leader of their group, later known as the Family. At some point, Dennis left the women at the house and he went to Brian Wilson's house for a recording session. When he came back to his house around 3 in the morning, he found it full of people, and this is most likely when Dennis first met Charles. He was drawn to Charles's charismatic personality and his reputation as a folk singer and songwriter. A friendship soon developed between the 2 men that was mutually beneficial. Manson was eager to use Dennis's connections to further his music career, and Dennis took full advantage of Manson's ability to bring young women to the house and partake in the psychedelic drug-fueled sex race. Soon after meeting, Charles and roughly 24 members of his family took up residence at Dennis's home for about 5 months. During that time, the family exploited Dennis's hospitality, running errands in his cars, eating his food, selling or giving away his possessions, wearing his clothes, having wild parties, and Dennis seemed to enjoy it all, at least for a time. Dennis felt a lot of guilt over becoming rich at such a young age, to the point where he actively gave away a lot of his money to his friends, and so I think it's safe to say he probably enjoyed sharing his wealth with Charles and his followers. In 1971, an anonymous member of the Beach Boys told Rolling Stone magazine, "I suppose the lifestyle appealed to him. Dennis ran up the largest bill in history the time the whole family got the." Dennis's mother, Audrey Wilson, said, "They were just hippies, and he, Dennis, thought Manson was the nicest person, a very gentle, nice guy. I did think they were a bunch of leeches." After the release of Pet Sounds in 1966, the Beach Boys' creative driving force, Brian Wilson, started to experience a period of emotional stress and erratic behavior. His songwriting output slowed significantly, and by the summer of 1968, Brian found himself in a psychiatric hospital seeking treatment.
The Beach Boys had a serious bout with drugs and was diagnosed as schizophrenic, staying in bed for 4 years in the early 70s.
As talented as Brian is, as much as I admire him, I really don't think he likes to be in the limelight. I don't think so at all. I just don't think so. I think now, at this point in his life, he'll probably do anything to stay out of it.
Dennis, however, loved the limelight. He was a natural ham, just wanting to please people, off stage as well as on.
Hi, my name is Dennis Wilson. I make rock and roll records.
There was a magnetism about him, charisma. He was unpretentious, charming, and had a heart of gold.
From all accounts, Dennis was very gentle and unpretentious, but he was also defiant and undisciplined, constantly hunting for pleasure but never finding happiness.
On top of this, their popularity as a band had reached its lowest level, and they were generally seen as uncool. They were also facing mounting debt, and they had a fast approaching deadline of delivering one last album to fulfill their contract with Capitol Records. So with Brian out of the picture, the rest of the band were stuck picking up the reins, either by finishing songs Brian started or writing new songs themselves. Dennis was a gifted songwriter. However, he struggled with writing lyrics, but this was something that Charles had a gift for. Neil Young said, Manson would sing a song and just make it up as he went along for 3 or 4 minutes, and he would never repeat one word, and it all made perfect sense, and it shook you up to listen to it. It was so good that it scared you. He had this kind of music that nobody else was doing. I thought he really had something crazy, something great. He was like a living poet. Dennis admired Charles's musical talent and wanted to help him be heard. And so sometime during the summer of '68, Dennis arranged for Charles to start recording some of his songs at Brian Wilson's home studio. According to Charles, he recorded about 10 songs, and they were very well produced, with some members of the Beach Boys playing on the tracks and some of his female followers singing backup vocals. Around 100 hours were put on tape with about 6 to 8 songs recorded. Some of the material was pretty good. He had musical talent. Now, we don't know what songs were recorded, but we can assume that they were probably a lot of the same songs that appeared on Charles's debut. Dennis told a UK magazine, "The wizard is Charles Manson, who is another friend of mine. He sings, plays, and writes poetry, and may be another artist for Brother Records." Now, Brother Records was the newly formed record label created by the Beach Boys in order to give themselves total creative control over their music. Each member was encouraged to bring talent they discovered and record them. Also, during this time, Charles wrote the song "Cease to Exist" as a way to heal the differences the Beach Boys were experiencing at this time. The band bought the song, paying Charles some amount of cash along with a motorcycle. When asked why the band didn't give Charles songwriting credit, Dennis said he didn't want that. He wanted money instead. I gave him about $100,000 worth of stuff. Once they bought the song, Dennis changed some of the lyrics and retitled it "Never Learn Not to Love." The band then recorded it in their signature style and released it in December as a B-side to the single "Bluebirds Over the Mountain." This angered Charles, though, as he felt if they hadn't have changed his lyrics, the song would have been a hit. Terry Melcher, son of Doris Day and producer of some of the bigger hits by the Byrds. Terry thought Charles had some talent, but not enough to help him get a recording contract with a major label, but he was interested in recording his music and possibly making a documentary on Charles and the family. Gradually, Dennis grew tired of the endless party at his Sunset Boulevard home, and since his lease was set to expire at the beginning of September, he moved out to a beach house a month early in August of 1968. He didn't exactly let Charles know what was going on and left it up to the Beach Boys manager to evict everyone still living there.
So notice that they keep saying San Francisco, which is interesting because the place where it's now been discovered that, you know, MK Ultra and Charlie Manson was a part of MK Ultra was, in fact, San Francisco. Like Charlie Manson knew a lot of famous musicians like Neil Young, and he probably knew Jim Morrison and all the people from Laurel Canyon. Now, Jake, what is the drug they used for MK Ultra experiments? Do you know?
Ooh, it would be
the main one.
Lysergic ditrytamine acid. I don't know. Is that LSD? Right?
LSD, right. So keep that in mind because I'll come back to that. Now, if YouTube doesn't copyright strike this video I'm going to show you next, I would like to play a clip of the song "Cease to Exist," which is Charles Manson's song, and then the Beach Boys one. But before that, I'm going to explain my two big theories that I've never seen anywhere on YouTube of Charles Manson, LSD, and like just the darkness surrounding his case, the darkness surrounding, you know, how he could have been framed. So check this out. Now, as I was creating this Charles Manson Beach Boys video, I thought to myself, being a huge Beach Boys fan, isn't it ironic that Brian Wilson, the genius mind behind the Beach Boys, developed mental illness after one bad LSD trip? And then you think, what did MK Ultra use on its victims? LSD. So was Charles Manson trying to infiltrate the Beach Boys? It kind of makes you think, huh? Well, that's not the craziest of my theories, but we'll be talking about that here in a little bit. Now, what I'm about to play is a clip of Charles Manson's music, and personally, I think it's actually pretty good, but I'll let you guys be the judge of that. And I'm actually curious what you guys actually think, so leave me a comment below. Let me know if you like him or not.
Pretty girl, pretty girl. Cease to exist. Just come and say you love me. Give up your world. Come on, you can't be.
Now that was Charles Manson's version. Here's Dennis Wilson and the Beach Boys version. Now I must say, I'm a Beach Boys fan. I'm a big fan of their music. But their album is called 2020, people. What does 2020 and Helter Skelter, aka the race war, have to do with each other? Does it sound familiar? Did Charles Manson have inside knowledge on what the government was planning to do in this day and age with the media? Or maybe I'm just crazy.
The 3rd precinct of the Minneapolis Police Department on fire. Nearby businesses ablaze. This is how the night of May 28th unfolded. George Floyd's arrest and death in police custody on Monday set off protests in the Twin Cities. The protesters are demanding that criminal charges be brought against the officers involved.
Put their fists up! Yeah! We all here! All lives matter!
When that didn't happen on Thursday, some demonstrators escalated their tactics, while others tried to keep the peace.
Stop! Don't stop!
Now, suspiciously, well, I say suspiciously, Dennis Wilson's cause of death, he had just divorced his wife. There was a yacht that they both shared, and when they would fight on the boat, he would throw stuff out the window of the boat into the water. So when he died, he was very depressed. His wife had left him, and what he was doing was he was diving into the marina, I believe is what you call it, I don't know. But he was diving in the water, and he was swimming to the bottom and collecting the things that he had thrown out prior. And then, this is what the official story is, that he bumped his head on a dock, like on one of those wooden docks, and drowned. But he was found in the fetal position, which maybe I should do a whole other history segment on that, because it's super weird and interesting. But what are your thoughts, Jake?
Oh man, yeah, it's so interesting how they seem to cover up the connection between this guy and the music he influenced. You know, maybe just because he was so I don't know,
he was charismatic,
blacklisted,
yeah,
charismatic or something. Maybe they just didn't want people associating the tie. But it's just I'm just really interested you're bringing this out, man. This is music history.
Yeah, and I mean, like, the Beach Boys, like this album right here, this is called Pet Sounds. This is by far my favorite album, and I've listened to a lot of albums, but in my opinion, this is the most perfect album in the world. Everything about it is it's like nothing. I can't even explain it, but it's my favorite record of all time. And if you haven't listened to it, check it out. I mean, I don't know if there are any subliminal messages in there or anything, but I don't know. It's just cool how they brought they influenced Sgt. Pepper and music after that with Pet Sounds. Paul McCartney, and they say he's dead, but it's the same Paul McCartney. But Paul McCartney said that Sgt. Pepper and their later music was inspired by Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys. So I always thought that was pretty interesting, and music history is very interesting in my opinion, because I'm a musician, you're a musician, and maybe a lot of people that are watching are musicians, who knows. So I hope you guys enjoyed this week's history segment. If you like the Charles Manson thing, or if you want me to cover Dennis Wilson again, leave me a comment, let me know, and then I'll do it. So that's all I got. I hope you guys enjoyed. All right, well, let's meet me up. Meet me up.
All right, I'm going to blaze through these because we got quite a few. Some submitted by OPA. This one in particular got me laughing. I got a new car, and the chicks love it. Here we go. When you become frustrated with older people because of what they cannot do, think of how frustrated they must feel because they can no longer do it. The day the whole class found the teacher's brownies, then she put on Pink Floyd.
That's
This must have been the 60s, 70s. All right. The people telling us not to be offended by a beer can are the same people who are offended by syrup. That's funny. You talked about that in your segment, too.
Yeah.
This is someone's privacy fence. Incredible creativity.
Opa said he wants that.
Yeah, I want that, too. That's a pretty cool way to hide your house.
I'm going to build one.
If you build it, they will come.
Here's an Uber driver. Really comfortable.
Yeah, looks pretty comfortable.
It's a sad world when your 7-year-old son can't pretend he's an Indian, but a grown man can pretend that he's a woman. Mommy, what did that lady mean when she said what her pronouns are? It means she's insane and you should stay away from her. For a more organized home, make sure everything has a place, including your cat in the basket.
They'll find anything.
I'm reading a book about anti-gravity, Spock. Sounds fascinating, Captain. I can't put it down. Gravity, the theory that still remains a theory. Or we only know 4% of where the gravity comes from. The rest of it is dark matter and dark energy. All right. When the Bible tells you what to do when you have a log in your eye, but not when your brother in Christ has a stick up their butt. Pull out the log in your own eye, not the speck in your, before you pull the speck out of your brother's. I don't know about pulling that stick out of their butt.
Yeah.
Dude, you sold me a freaking muffin. Leave a tip, 15%, 20%, 25%. Man, I feel so much pressure nowadays going to restaurants and different places because they do this psychology of flipping the thing around and going, here's your choices of giving me a tip for literally doing something that I'm being paid to do.
Yeah, I came in here to get the muffin. I saved you the work or the trouble of bringing it to me.
Yep. Yeah, I saw a whole documentary on it. It's a modern conspiracy happening in the restaurant industry today. Them. Just be loving and respect all religions. Me and the boys. Bringing down these idols. Yeah. I found it interesting that during Charles' coronation, he changed his title from Defender of the Faith to Defender of all faiths. And that to me is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
All right, here's another one. When you've ignored your laundry for weeks, bring in the semi, boys. We're doing laundry today. All right, here. Bike still for sale? Yes, it is. What's the lowest you'll go on it? 2 miles per hour. Anything less than that, and you'll tip over. Oh boy. Oh, here's a cool picture I saw Chad Riley post. It's this is the Vishnu temple located in Grand Canyon, Arizona, and it used to be possibly a giant sphinx. You can see kind of the shape up here.
Yeah.
It looks like a pyramid with the sphinx arms in front of it.
It does.
I can only wonder.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Old world America. It's fascinating. All right, here's salt and pepper shakers. Guess which one is salt? Lot's wife or Lot? Here we go. I'm sorry I have to let you all go. You're just not freaks anymore. You have a super fat man, a tattooed guy, and a bearded woman. Oh, wow.
Man, they're out of work. It's not fair.
Yeah. Here's a good reminder. A man doesn't complain, he adapts. He doesn't make excuses, he makes solutions. He doesn't blame others, he takes responsibility. My favorite childhood memory is my back not hurting.
Me too.
Oh, man. When you cook dinner at home instead of ordering from DoorDash. Oh, man. Is that the Little House on the Prairie family?
I think opposite. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. We stayed at the Laura Van Wilder RV park in Missouri. There near Ava, Missouri, the place where I guess their museum is for the Little House on the Prairie people. The woman who wrote the book.
Cool.
It's pretty interesting. Reading 20 pages per day is 30 books per year. Saving $10 per day is $3,650 per year. Running 1 mile per day is 365 miles per year. Becoming 1% better per day is 37 times better per year. Small habits are underestimated. I thought that was pretty cool. When you want to go fishing, but you don't have a boat, pull out the kiddie pool. All right. Waitress says, say when grating my cheese. I never say when. The room fills with Parmesan. There are no survivors. They always seem to like give you that look when they know you don't want to say no more cheese, but they slow it down a little bit, and then you're like, okay, I get it. You don't want to give me any more. It's kind of like a guilt trip.
I tell them, keep on coming. Keep on coming.
Keep on.
Yeah.
I couldn't find this little girl's parents, so I trapped her with dinosaurs so she wouldn't run off while I found them. Oh, poor little girl. All right. Glad I survived your Facebook friend purge. Now I can go back to having no clue who you are. I always see that from time to time. People are like, I'm purging my Facebook friends. Everybody's fake and nobody comments or likes on my posts, so I'm deleting everyone. Oh, man. Just social media, guys.
That's what it's come to.
Yep. My grocery delivery didn't have the bag of shredded cheese I ordered, so they substituted with a block of cheese instead. I had to shred the cheese myself, by hand, like the Amish. Oh, man. All right, when you want to eavesdrop on your neighbors arguing, so you stand at the open windows and break out your embroidery. I guess it's how you snooped on people back in the, 1700s. I think Sierra sent me that one. All right, why don't the 99 of us who aren't offended by everything quit catering to the 1% who are?
Yeah.
I think that's a good amount of wisdom there, Snoopy. Here's somebody driving down in the Texas heat during the summer, I guess. They're running a generator with an air conditioner plugged into it, sticking out in their car window.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah. All right. When I was a kid... No, dude, you're going to have to read this one with your Kermit voice.
When I was a kid, my parents would always say, "Excuse my French," after a swear word. I'll never forget my first day at school when my teacher asked me if any of us knew any French, like Miss Piggy.
Oh, man. And last one, Keith Richards preparing for the next world tour in 21-23.
Yeah, that's pretty great. I don't know how he's still alive.
That's amazing. And he does look like a shaved version of Jack Sparrow, you know?
Well, Jack Sparrow was actually fashioned after Keith Richards. Do you know that?
Yeah, Johnny doing his hand thing and all that.
Mm-hmm. And that's why Keith Richards played the dad of Captain Jack Sparrow in Pirates of the Caribbean. It's pretty crazy.
Sweet. All right, that's all for this week, guys.
All right, Jake, thank you for another great current news and memes as always. Opa, thank you for another great Opa's Corner. I hope you guys enjoyed the history, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you for coming on this journey with us every week as we continue to stay on the quest for truth. Subscribe and stay tuned. If you would like to submit a story, topic, or have any other inquiries, please email submit@skibanewsnation.com. Also, you can email Jeremiah Skiba personally at jeremiah@skibanewsnation.com. Also, email Jake personally at jake@skibanewsnation.com. If you want to write us a letter, send us something, help support us, or just say hi, please send your letter to Jeremiah Skiba, P.O. Box 560-271, The Colony, Texas 75056. If you write us a letter, I'll do my best to write you back. Hey, Skiba News Nation family, thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, and click that notification bell so you never miss an episode of Skiba News Nation. If you want to help support us, please consider becoming a Patreon, where you will get exclusive content, shoutouts, and much more. And you can also support our channel by getting yourself some new Skiba News Nation merch. Thank you for coming on this journey with us as we continue to stay on the quest for truth. Huge shout out to all our Patreon supporters. Thank you so much for your support. We couldn't do this show without you. If you want to help support us, go to patreon.com/Skiba News Nation. Also, you can listen to Skiba News Nation podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. If you would like to submit a story, topic, or have any other inquiries, please email submit@skibanewsnation.com. Also, you can email Jeremiah Skiba personally at jeremiah@skibanewsnation.com. Also, email Jake personally at jake@skibanewsnation.com. If you want to write us a letter, send us something, help support us, or just say hi, please send your letter to Jeremiah Skiba, P.O. Box 560-271, The Colony, Texas 75056. If you write us a letter, I'll do my best to write you back. Hey, Skiba News Nation family, thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, and click that notification bell so you never miss an episode of Skiba News Nation. If you want to help support us, please consider becoming a Patreon, where you will get exclusive content, shoutouts, and much more. And you can also support our channel by getting yourself some new Skiba News Nation merch. Thank you for coming on this journey with us as we continue to stay on the quest for truth. Huge shout out to all our Patreon supporters. Thank you so much for your support. We couldn't do this show without you. If you want to help support us, go to patreon.com/Skiba News Nation. Also, you can listen to Skiba News Nation podcasts on your favorite podcast platform.